A single mistake, made 40 seconds too early, echoed across the hull of a 560-foot nuclear submarine, and it nearly got everyone killed. Seaman Kyle Monroe had no idea how close he was to triggering a catastrophic chain reaction when he tapped the wrong circuit panel during a silent drill. But Commander Elias Donovan knew, and so did the rest of the crew. Let us know in the comments which branch of the military you admire most. The USS Defiant was conducting a covert systems test, 400 feet beneath the South China Sea. No lights, no sound. Every crew member operating from memory and muscle, simulating an electrical blackout caused by EMP interference. It was the kind of drill that separated good sailors from dangerous ones. Monroe, 20 years old, 5 weeks out of basic, had already been warned twice about hesitation. But this time, his mistake was the opposite: overconfidence. He reached for the backup battery relay and reactivated power before the final lockdown was confirmed. The effect was instantaneous. Every screen lit up, a sonar ping fired, and in the surrounding waters, 2 Chinese listening vessels perked up like wolves hearing a twig snap. Inside the Defiant, chaos. Who reset power? Sonar ping confirmed. Active. Repeat. Active ping released. Commander Donovan's voice didn't rise above conversation. Level. But it cut through steel. Freeze. All hands hold position. The boat fell silent again. Only the gentle hum of systems coming back online filled the space. Donovan stepped out of the command pit, walking with steady, practiced steps. He reached Seaman Monroe, who stood frozen at the relay terminal, hand still outstretched. "You did that?" Donovan asked calmly. Monroe swallowed hard. I thought we were cleared to reset. You didn't think," Donovan interrupted. "You assumed." He turned to the control deck. "Shut down all comms. Enter stealth mode." 5-minute hard silence. Then back to Monroe. "Follow me." Down in auxiliary control, Monroe stood at attention. Donovan faced him, expression unreadable. "Seaman Monroe," he said, "do you understand what an active sonar ping sounds like to enemy hydrophones?" "Yes, sir." "Do you know what happens when you light up the ocean during a blackout?" "Simulation?" "Yes, sir." "What happens?" "They know where we are, sir." "And what are we carrying on this submarine?" Monroe hesitated. "Nuclear weapons, sir." Donovan's voice didn't rise. "But that wasn't your first thought, was it? Your first thought was, I want to be the one who gets the system back online. Am I right?" Monroe nodded, eyes burning. "Yes, sir. That's the problem." On the bridge, Lieutenant Ortiz leaned in toward the sonar screen, picking up faint echoes. 2 vessels adjusting heading. Approximate range, 27 nautical miles. No pings, but bearing toward our last known location. Donovan returned moments later, voice low. "Maintain bearing. Drop speed to 5 knots. Passive sonar only." Ortiz nodded. "Sir, if they follow, they'll find nothing. Unless we make another mistake." Monroe was reassigned. No more control duty. No reactor watch. No sonar relay. He scrubbed decks, cleaned oxygen vents, unplugged and replugged every cable in the diagnostics bay, twice. Petty Officer Langley, who supervised him, said nothing for 2 days. Then finally, "You don't fix mistakes by sulking, Monroe. You fix them by learning." Monroe looked up. "From a floor panel. Learning what?" Langley met his eyes. "That being useful is not the same as being ready." Meanwhile, Commander Donovan met privately with the XO. "The kid's not malicious," Donovan said, "but he's eager, and that's more dangerous than ignorance. What's your move?" "I'm going to show him what real pressure feels like." On day 12 of patrol, the Defiant entered a disputed zone, neutral on paper, but everyone knew what ran beneath it. Old Cold War fiber optic cables. Deep-sea data trunks still live. Donovan briefed the crew. "We're not here to spy. We're here to see who's listening. We're simulating a comms blackout, then pulsing a decoy burst through the water. It'll register like a scramble, like a captain panicking. If someone responds, we know where they are. Monroe overheard in the galley. He asked Petty Officer Langley, "Why would we bait them?" Langley replied, "To see if they bite." 2300 hours, the decoy pulse was triggered. It shot through the water like a flare. No response. At error 100, a signal returned. Weak, short burst. Not an attack, just curious. The signature matched one from the Russian Northern Fleet, 4,000 miles away. "Someone's bouncing sonar off ocean cables," Ortiz muttered. Donovan narrowed his eyes, which means someone else is listening. The next morning, systems rebooted. And someone triggered a diagnostic scan. The command terminal lit up briefly, too briefly. Just long enough for Monroe to notice a blinking folder before it vanished. Encrypted. No label. Just 5 characters. BR549, he reported it. Donovan brought in engineering and cybersec. They couldn't find it. But Donovan believed Monroe. Where did you see it? Maintenance override panel. Same screen I messed up before. I didn't click it. It disappeared right after the boot. Donovan stared at him. You're saying you saw something we can't trace? Something that vanished? Monroe nodded. I think someone else is in the system. Or someone doesn't want to be found. 3 hours later, Commander Donovan was still awake. He stood in the command pit, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the sonar console. The usual soft pulsing of passive sonar filled the chamber, rhythmic and familiar. But he wasn't listening to the ocean. He was listening for silence. Anything? He asked without turning. Lieutenant Ortiz shook her head. Nothing out of pattern, still drifting. No transmissions, no returns. Donovan exhaled slowly. That's what bothers me. Below deck, Seaman Monroe was deep into cable diagnostics. He was determined to prove he was more than the guy who lit up the ocean. He'd taken Petty Officer Langley's lessons to heart. This time, he verified everything twice, then again for good measure. But when he pulled back panel E17, something caught his eye. A wire he hadn't seen before. Spliced into the relay but painted to match. A careful camouflage, he followed it. With a flashlight. It ran beneath the cooling system, through a maintenance vent, and into the old emergency storage locker. No one used that space. It hadn't been opened in years. Monroe pushed the door open and froze. Inside was a small handheld device, taped to the wall, battery pack attached. It was blinking, not fast, not urgent, just slow, consistent. He didn't touch it. He ran straight to Langley. 10 minutes later, Donovan stood in front of the device with a gloved hand and a sealed container. Someone planted this? He asked. Langley nodded. Looks like it was installed before deployment. Whoever did this knew exactly where our blind spots were. Monroe added. It was wired into the system, quiet. No signal, just recording. Donovan lifted the device gently and dropped it into the containment box. Not anymore. Back in secure comms, the tech team ran diagnostics on the retrieved device. It's a data logger, said Chief Reynolds, but it's got something else, some kind of firmware beacon, like it's waiting to be activated remotely. Monroe leaned over the console. So someone could have turned it on without ever boarding? Reynolds nodded. Exactly. Donovan didn't flinch. Was it broadcasting? No, but it was listening. Donovan closed his eyes. To what? That night, Donovan met privately with his XO, Lieutenant Commander Fielding. I want a full sweep. Every panel, every conduit, every locker. Quietly. Sir, that'll take days. The crew's already on edge. We don't have days. If one device was planted, there may be more. And if one sailor noticed it, we got lucky. Fielding frowned. You think this is sabotage? I think someone turned our sub into a sensor. The sweep began at 0400. Quiet, one deck at a time. Monroe was assigned to assist a senior technician named Holcomb. Stern, silent, meticulous, as They checked relay lines in Storage Bay 5, Holcomb said without looking up. You got lucky, finding that device. Monroe nodded. Maybe. You don't seem like the lucky type. Monroe hesitated. You think someone planted it for me to find? I think someone wanted you to prove yourself. He turned. And you did. By daybreak, they'd found 2 more devices, smaller, less sophisticated, but similar purpose. All were embedded deep in forgotten corners of the ship. Donovan ordered them contained, not destroyed. We're not just dealing with sabotage, he said to Fielding. We're dealing with study. Someone's watching how we react, Fielding said. A foreign adversary? Donovan shook his head. Someone who knows our systems too well. On day 15, a new alert came through passive sonar. Not a vessel, a ping, echoed off the continental shelf. Not aimed directly at them, but through them, like someone was searching for a shadow. Ortiz adjusted the gain. Sir, that frequency matches the one we used during the decoy operation. Donovan leaned in. They're mimicking us? No, sir, she said. They're trying to see who else responds. Donovan looked around the control room, which means they know we're here. Down in the mess hall, Monroe sat alone, reviewing system logs on a tablet. Reynolds approached. You did good, he said, sitting across. Monroe looked up. I got lucky. Reynolds shook his head. No, you were curious. That's different. Monroe stared at the screen. It's weird. I feel more connected to this sub now that I'm not allowed to run her. That's how respect starts, Reynolds said. Not by touching power, but by understanding its weight. That night, the lighting dimmed to red as the sub prepared for stealth drift. Monroe lay in his bunk, eyes open. A thought kept running through his mind. What if he was still aboard? Whoever planted those devices, what if they were hiding in plain sight? He sat up, pulled out the system logs again. There it was, a single access signature. Someone had entered the diagnostics bay 14 hours after the first sweep. It was Holcomb. But Holcomb was never assigned there. Monroe's heart pounded. He grabbed his boots and ran. Monroe found Chief Holcomb in the tool bay near the torpedo room, seemingly finishing a routine inventory check. Chief, Monroe said, trying to keep his tone neutral. Got a minute? Holcomb glanced up, his face unreadable. Something on your mind, Seaman? I was reviewing access logs. You were in the diagnostics bay last night, after the sweep. A beat. Holcomb wiped his hands slowly with a rag. And? You weren't assigned there. Holcomb smiled faintly. Assignment logs aren't always current. Maybe I was checking for loose cable mounts. Maybe I got curious. Curious enough to override security? Holcomb stopped smiling. Monroe's pulse quickened. You planted the others, didn't you? Holcomb looked over his shoulder. Nobody else in sight. He stepped closer. I planted nothing, he whispered. But I found something. Monroe's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Holcomb leaned in. There's another system. One not on any manifest. One the commander doesn't even know about. I found it 6 weeks ago. Tucked behind coolant line K9. Why didn't you report it? Holcomb looked him dead in the eyes. Because I don't know whose system it is. Monroe went straight to Commander Donovan. He recounted every word. Holcomb was brought in, not under arrest, but under observation. This system you found, Donovan said. Can you take me to it? Holcomb nodded once. They descended 3 decks and opened a maintenance panel behind the coolant line. Sure enough, nestled in a metal alcove was a sealed black box. No labels, no markings. Wires led away in 3 directions. Up to auxiliary power, down to internal navigation, and sideways into communications. It had been drawing energy silently for months. Get it out, Donovan said. But when Reynolds disconnected, the final cable, a burst of white noise exploded through the sub's comm system. Every intercom squealed, monitors flashed, lights flickered. And then, a voice, broken, garbled, machine filtered. You're too late. Then silence. Monroe's breath caught in his throat. Donovan stared at the box. That wasn't a recording. The USS Defiant went into full lockdown. All systems went dark except life support and navigation. Donovan summoned his senior staff. I believe someone built a shadow network inside our sub. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it was communicating and possibly controlling critical systems. Reynolds frowned. Why reveal itself now? Ortiz answered. Because we pulled the plug. Fielding turned to Donovan. Sir, could this be US tech? I don't know, Donovan admitted, but I intend to find out. They ran diagnostics on the black box. Nothing. The storage drive had self-wiped the moment power was cut. But Monroe had a theory. What if it's not just on the sub, but talking to others? Ortiz perked up. Networked? Monroe nodded. It could be one of many ghost nodes, hidden in other vessels, communicating through passive sonar frequencies. Donovan leaned in. Start scanning. Use our decoy sonar. Bounce pulses at random. Look for anything that shouldn't echo back. 2 hours later, they found it. A ping returned. From below, from the sea floor. Reynolds adjusted the gain. There's something down there. Not moving, not natural. Donovan ordered descent. The Defiant crept down 200 more feet, and then they saw it. A canister, long, cylindrical, anchored to the seabed, still emitting. Ortiz muttered, "We just found the router." A salvage drone was dispatched. It retrieved the device and returned it to the dry lab on board. Inside, a hard-wired data array linked to frequencies in the ultra-low range, normally used by whales. Keller's signature coding style. Donovan whispered, "It's a broadcast node," Reynolds added, "which means Keller didn't plant just one." Fielding asked, "How many more do you think are out there?" No one answered. Monroe sat alone that night, staring at the closed panel where the black box had once been. He thought about Holcomb's warning. He thought about Keller's voice, and he realized something. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a test, not of systems, but of people. Trust, judgment, composure under pressure, and he'd passed it, for now. But the war beneath the waves wasn't over. The salvage data arrived in pieces, encrypted, fragmented, but not erased. Monroe and Ortiz worked side by side for hours, decrypting signal patterns from the seabed node. Keller's design was unmistakable. Multi-band frequency hopping, redundant. Signals, and a looping dead man protocol if tampered with. He expected us to find it, Monroe said. Ortiz nodded. He wanted us to know. Commander Donovan watched silently from the command pit, his face hardened. "This isn't just espionage," he said. "It's philosophy. In the decrypted data, they found more than communications logs. They found confessions, logs from naval officers, past and present, discussing covert programs, broken protocols, ethics overridden in favor of secrecy, voice snippets, transcripts, even names Donovan recognized from his early days in Norfolk, and one folder labeled simply Seeds. It contained blueprints, micro-routing devices, minimal power. No emissions, just enough to track, log, and respond. Placed in subs, in aircraft, even on personnel. Ortiz whispered, "He's been building a second navy." Donovan stood before the crew that evening. The lights were low, the air tense. "Men and women of the Defiant," he began. "You've endured more than I ever expected to ask of you." They listened, unmoving. "You've faced sabotage, surveillance, a ghost in the machine, and through it all, you remained sailors. A beat. I've received orders from Pacific Command. We're to return immediately, decontaminate, debrief, and prepare for formal inquiry." He paced slowly. "But let me tell you what you won't find in that inquiry." He stopped. "You won't find the name Ethan Keller." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Because officially, he's been dead for 5 years. And everything we've just uncovered? Buried with him." Monroe stood in the back, eyes wide. Donovan continued. We found something deeper than betrayal. We found doubt. And the only way to beat doubt is with truth. He scanned the room. So here's the truth. Keller knew us, knew our tech, knew our blind spots. But he underestimated one thing. He stepped closer. Our unity. Silence, then quiet applause, then more. Then the crew stood, not in celebration, but in solidarity. They hadn't won, but they had survived. 2 days later, the Defiant surfaced off the coast of San Diego. Naval security swept the sub-bow to stern. Devices were removed, reports taken, interrogations launched. But Donovan kept one data shard, the one labeled Final Entry. It was audio only, Keller's voice again. Calm, steady. If you're hearing this, then congratulations. You've survived your first lesson. Not everyone does. But understand this, I'm not your enemy. I'm your reflection, a version of you that stopped pretending the system works. I don't want to destroy the Navy. I want to rebuild it from truth, from the bottom up. A pause. And if you ever feel the pressure pressing in, that creeping doubt that maybe you're the one being watched, trust it. You are. Commander Donovan stood alone on the dock, watching as sailors disembarked. Monroe walked past, saluting. Donovan returned it. Ortiz stayed behind, holding the sealed drive they'd extracted from the seabed. What now? She asked. Donovan took the drive. We lock it away, and we watch. For Keller? For the next Keller. Sometimes the greatest threat isn't a torpedo or a foreign enemy. It's a whisper inside the system. A man like Keller doesn't just sabotage hardware, he sabotages belief. And belief is the backbone of any crew, any command, any navy. The silence beneath the sea. Integrity is all that holds a ship together. So what would you have done in Commander Donovan's place? Would you expose Keller to the world, or protect the Navy's honor at all costs? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe stories like this can teach as well as thrill, subscribe to Authority Watch. Because in the deep, we don't just navigate pressure, we live in it.